right, it's officially team building season, Mike. So that means free agency and your specialty, the NFL draft. Let's go through all 32 teams and their biggest draft need. This is the biggest one, right? They might have multiple, but let's get through to it right now. The New England Patriots, they need a wide receiver. Even though they drafted N'Keal Harry in the first round last year, obviously they were lacking weapons this year.
Yeah, I was going to say, and it's not really just wide receiver, it's more speed. They have some guys at wide receiver there in N'Keal Harry and also Mohamed Sanu, who can excel in a certain role, but that role is not in terms of downfield passing. They do not have a downfield threat at the receiver position. They're in luck, though, the way this draft is setting up a lot of speed there at the top of the receiver position. Someone will be sitting there nicely for them in the middle of the first round.
Could also use that, maybe not Gronk, but a tight end to throw to. So all pass catchers for the Patriots. The New York Jets, that's right, we're staying in the AFC East. We'll go division by division. The Jets need offensive line to help Sam Darnold, maybe everywhere on offense, but particularly up front.
Yeah, they definitely need help along that offensive line. They have a young tackle in Chuma Edoga who looked good on the right side there, but that interior needs to be reworked. They just didn't give Le'Veon Bell any sort of holes. They need to just improve any sort of supporting cast they can around Sam Darnold here. And again, it's a good year to be in need of offensive tackle help or wide receiver help. They'll get a good one there at pick number 11.
I love the way the offensive tackle class is coming together. A lot of guys in that first round mix. Moving on to the Miami Dolphins, we know they've got 1 million draft picks. We know that they have plenty of holes on the team, but it's all going to start with the quarterback of the future.
Yeah, Fitzmagic was never going to be the guy. He was a stopgap. And Josh Rosen, if you benched him in a year or two after trading for him, chances are he's not going to be your guy either going forward. Looks like they are firmly in the Tua Tagovailoa sweepstakes.
Would you trade up, make that power move for him?
It depends on the injury, what we see then. But if he is fully healthy, you get a clean bill of health draft day, I'd trade up to number 3 and go.
Either way, the Dolphins are well positioned to go find the quarterback that they want, other than maybe Joe Burrow. And then the Buffalo Bills, we're going with wide receiver here because we've seen how good their defense has been the last couple of years, but maybe more playmakers for Josh Allen.
And again, a similar thing to the New England Patriots. They have talent at wide receiver. They need a big body. They need a catch radius guy. We know with Josh Allen's somewhat shaky accuracy history over the course of his career, just getting a guy who can be his, the quarterback's best friend, sort of guy, a T. Higgins out of Clemson, someone with a catch radius to help him secure some of those off-target passes, be a more possession type receiver.
We'll also love what John Brown and Cole Beasley did this year as free agent signings. Adding that next guy could really help that Bills offense. Let's go to the AFC North, the Pittsburgh Steelers. We're going back to the offensive line here. It's been a strength for a while for Pittsburgh, but time to replenish.
Yeah, just starting to get a little old there, and they're in kind of a unique position where they don't have a lot of needs. Mock drafting for the Steelers in years past and even this year on into the second round is going to be difficult because you can't really pinpoint one area of the roster where they say you have to address this. So just adding more depth along the offensive line could also address the quarterback position at some point as well.
Kind of like how the Falcons have had a pretty good roster the last couple years, but they had to just replenish that line. Cleveland Browns, very specifically, not just O-line, it is the tackle position. That's where you could tell Baker Mayfield was feeling pressure before it was even there throughout much of the season.
Yeah, I would say when you cut your starting left tackle before the season and no one wants to sign him, and then he starts the rest of the year for you, that's not really a good sign, and I think that's kind of how it went for the Browns this year with obviously Greg Robinson starting there at left tackle. And again, another team who's in luck. There's probably 5 guys at the top of this draft that are legit, day one type of starters at the tackle position. Browns at number 10, almost certainly going to get one of them.
Moving on to the Baltimore Ravens, what a fantastic season they had. We're going edge defender. Matthew Judon is a free agent, and we just saw what they were able to do with Judon. Had career high in pressures, gets to the quarterback, so they can scheme it up, but they could use just that guy that can win one-on-one.
Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily even have to be edge defender. They just need a pass rusher in general because they schemed up a lot of pressure, the blitz-heaviest team in the NFL, because they didn't really have a guy that they could rely on that they knew they could win one-on-one consistently. So just any sort of guy, could even add in an off-ball linebacker that can blitz into that mix as a possible need because of just, again, how often they blitz and how much that would bring to the table for them.
Over 50% of the time they sense that extra pressure, highest in the NFL. And then the Cincinnati Bengals, very clear there. It's the quarterback sitting at the top. I guess the bigger question is not, do they need a quarterback? Is Joe Burrow clearly the guy?
Joe Burrow is, to me, clearly the guy. It's not even a discussion. I would put the name on the card right now and hand it in. That's how good Joe Burrow is as prospect, top prospect we've seen at the quarterback position in the PFF era. So a good year to be in need of a quarterback if you're the Cincinnati.
A lot of drama in the PFF hometown of Cincinnati right now, though.
Yeah.
A lot of Justin Herbert buzz and some other things going on. We would stick with Burrow, though. The Tennessee Titans, we're going with edge defender, another position that they've been trying to replenish the last couple years. Cameron Wake, older. Harold Landry maybe hasn't developed exactly how we hoped.
Yeah, I would say Cameron Wake ends up on IR. I don't think you can rely on him as old as he is at this point in his career. Harold Landry, solid on one side, hasn't been, necessarily taking the next step yet in year 2. We're hoping for big things from him in year 3, but definitely across from him, you need somebody. I think they like their edge defenders a little more athletic. They're in an interesting position there at the back end of the first round where maybe a Julian Aguara out of Notre Dame might sneak in.
All right, let's move on. The Indianapolis Colts. Wasn't expecting this, maybe, before the season, before Andrew Luck retired. They go with Jacoby Brissett, who I still think is, more of a high-end backup or bottom-end starter. So quarterback, a clear need for the Colts.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we saw Brissett's sort of true colors this year. A bottom 5 graded quarterback in the NFL in terms of starters. It's just definitely a position that they need to address. That is why they didn't make the playoffs this year, because it's a fairly complete roster along the rest of that team. So quarterback, they're not in a great position to go get one, but they have a lot of draft capital, could feasibly move up. We'll see where they end up when it's all said and done. So I do think that they end up getting one. Maybe it's not their guy, but they'll get one at some point.
The point you made, it's a good place to go. Brissett was bottom 5 in our grading, but mid-tier as far as stats go. They actually did a nice job scheming it up and creating some offense for Brissett. And then the Houston Texans, we're going with cornerback. I mean, this has been the story this year, a little bit of last year for the Texans. Deshaun Watson, he can do a lot on offense, but can the secondary hold up? Cornerback, a big need for the Texans.
Yeah, Jonathan Joseph, he's at the end of his line at this point, in his mid-30s. Can't rely on him too much more. And then Lonnie Johnson, last year's second-round pick, was the lowest-graded cornerback in the NFL. Eventually benched there when they traded for Garyon Conley. So even though they got Garyon Conley, still definitely need another one in that mix.
And everybody needs corners, Mike. Yeah. This is going to be the theme all draft season. They all need, you got to roll 3, 4, 5 deep at cornerback. So the Texans, they're still looking for, 1 and 2.
You got to go through Patrick Mahomes in the AFC nowadays, which means you better have some darn good cornerbacks.
You got to staff up to stop them. Jacksonville Jaguars, we're going with a linebacker. Miles Jack is there, but next to him, some question marks.
Yeah, I was going to say Quincy Williams had a rough rookie season. Very much looked like he was transitioning from FCS to the NFL. We'll see what they have from him long term, but I don't think you can send him out and feasibly rely on him with just how bad he was as a rookie. You can't go into year 2 with just him as your only option there.
All right, let's move on. The Kansas City Chiefs, the newly crowned Super Bowl champions, but still have room to improve on the back end at corner. They schemed it up this year. They hid their corners a little bit. Could they take that next step?
I would say they're the best one beside Breland. He is a free agent as well. So even if he does come back, it's still a need there at the cornerback position. They, like you said, did scheme it up, but adding another guy into that mix could just give you all you really need is an average defense with that offense on the other side of the ball, so a cornerback go a long way.
They've done a nice job taking like Kendall Fuller, Tyrann Mathieu, using them as versatile players, but getting that other guy on the outside would help. And then the Denver Broncos, how about a little bit more receiver help, even though we had saw Cortland Sutton, we saw some playmakers emerge in Denver, but just load up on weapons for Drew Lock.
I was going to say, the Broncos have a fairly complete-ish roster at this point, not a lot of glaring weaknesses, but someone across from Cortland Sutton, some speed on that offense with Drew Lock, with how big his arm is. They didn't really challenge down the field a lot when he came into the game. He was more of a game manager type those last handful of games, a lot of underneath stuff. Someone to stretch the field across from Cortland Sutton, takes pressure off Sutton, and then plays to Lock's strengths with that big arm.
Add that guy to Noah Fant, and you've got a pretty difficult offense to defend. Oakland Raiders, we're just saying the entire secondary. They've added a lot of pieces up front, offensive line, defensive line. Last couple years, they went Jonathan Abram in the draft last year at safety, but just the overall secondary needs to cover better.
Yeah, they got Jonathan Abram, Trayvon Mullen at cornerback, but they, like we already said, they adulterated Garyon Conley. Need another cornerback there for sure. You really don't want LaMarcus Joyner playing back in the slot. You'd much rather have him move back to his safety position that he played so well with the Rams. Really struggled to transition to full-time slot cornerback this year. So I do think Raiders could use some help in that secondary, whether it's slot cornerback or an outside cornerback. Yeah,
Trayvon was solid as a second-round pick, but still a lot of room to improve there. And I'm guessing with the Los Angeles Chargers, for the 5th year in a row, we're going offensive line here. That's the big need.
10th year in a row.
10th year, it's been a while.
It really has, and they just, no matter what they seemingly do at their position, nothing ends up working out. But I do think that's no reason to stop addressing it. You have to keep going back to the well. Again, well positioned at the top of the draft to get one, but I think they're going to go QB in that top 10. So probably second round, probably more of a guard center type to help in that offense. Interior offensive lineman could start right away in the second round.
The true real need is to find their quarterback, but that could be addressed in free agency. Either way, offensive line is a big need in Los Angeles. Let's move on to the NFC. We've got the Green Bay Packers, and it is wide receiver. Aaron Rodgers was not old Aaron Rodgers for a big chunk of the season. Maybe an underrated story. It's like it's Devontae Adams and nobody else that he's really throwing to.
And that's the thing, is Rodgers plays so much in terms of trusting his receivers. That's so much of what that offense is. And has been for the Green Bay Packers, and when he doesn't trust a receiver, he's not throwing it his way. That's just the way Aaron Rodgers plays the game. And so with UDFAs across from Devontae Adams pretty much the entire season, he was just so hesitant to let that ball rip to those guys. So someone he trusts, you get some talent in there, build some rapport with Aaron Rodgers quickly. I think you see this offense take a leap in 2020.
I think there's a bunch of teams that should double up at receiver in this draft. They're one of them.
Yeah.
Double up at receiver. You get one or two guys and give Rodgers a good chance to finish strong in Green Bay. Minnesota Vikings, we're going to go cornerback. This is a defense a couple years ago. They were really healthy. They were loaded among the starters, but the depth has started to just disintegrate a little bit, and they got to replenish the cornerback position.
That's the thing. Trey Wayne's going to be a free agent this offseason. No sure thing that he comes back. Xavier Rhodes, not playing like the Xavier Rhodes of old, had easily the worst season of his career from a grading perspective. So they got the safety position, it seemed like, on lock there in Minnesota, but the cornerback position still very much in need. We're saying it for every team. If you don't have 2 to 3 solid cornerbacks, you need a cornerback in today's NFL.
Yeah, the team needs aren't all that different across the NFL. Help in the pass game. Yeah. Chicago Bears, we're looking at quarterback. You never want to be a year too late when it comes to moving on from your quarterback. And, maybe there's not a clear upgrade.
2 years too late.
Might be. But there might not be a clear option at the moment for them to draft somebody to immediately replace Mitchell Trubisky, but they need to be looking.
Yeah, I was going to say, they really put themselves behind the 8 ball over the last 2 drafts with that Khalil Mack deal, costing them their first-round pick. So realistically, whoever they draft in the second round or third round may not be an upgrade over Mitchell Trubisky at this point. So free agency, probably their best avenue, but I still think you got to take some shots in the middle rounds on the quarterback position just because of how valuable it is and what they got at the position right now.
Maybe a guy like Jacob Eason from Washington.
If he's there.
If he's there, he could
or even
sneak
they
up.
have a couple second rounders, could even move up to the back of the first.
All right, moving on to the Detroit Lions. We're going back to cornerback. They've had Darius Slay there year over year, and it always seems like, who's that guy opposite Slay? And they play so much man coverage. They really need to be 3 and 4 corners deep with all the man coverage they play.
That's the thing. If you play man coverage as much as they do, that's not hiding.
Right.
Like we talked about.
You can hide him in zone, but you can't hide him here.
You can't hide a guy in man coverage. You're going to get targeted, and that's just been the thing. Without, you don't have to attack Darius Slay. You don't have to attack one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL to have success against this Lions defense. They need not one, they need probably 2 good cornerbacks in this draft. They could keep going back to the well with how big of a need it is for them.
Take it as early as 3, perhaps,
Jeffrey
to
Okudah, very much in play.
Okudah at Ohio State. Philadelphia Eagles. They looked like they had some of the best receivers in the NFL coming into the season, but injuries absolutely crushed them. Now they've got older guys that are injured, some free agents. Let's replenish the receiver position.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think you just saw how big a need speed was for that offense. Very similar to what we talked about with the New England Patriots at the start of this, that they just got squatted on. Alshon Jeffrey, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, opposing defenses just were not scared of getting beaten deep by these wide receivers, and that just tightened so many of the throwing lanes underneath. So some speed. And again, another team that's in luck because there's some speed there waiting for them at 20.
Carson Wentz can stretch the field with that big arm, give him that speed receiver like a Deshaun Jackson. Dallas Cowboys, I called it the year of the slow tight end, Mike. The Patriots had slow tight ends, and Jason Witten's out there, a little bit past his prime. Add a nice playmaker in the middle of the field for the Cowboys.
Yeah, I think there's a handful of options on day 2 that would very much make sense at the tight end position, but it's been, like you mentioned, anyone that runs anything under a 4.8 40 will look like night and day compared to Jason Witten last year, who was hobbling around the field. in his mid-30s there. They just need someone because of how featured it is in Mike McCarthy's offense, in that Dak Prescott prefers to throw to in the Cowboys offense as well.
And if they bring Amari Cooper back, that's a tough offense to defend. Look at our friend Mike McCarthy there. That's right after he thanked PFF in his press conference for Dallas. New York Giants, we're going to go edge defender. This defense has kind of lost some talent the last couple years. I think they have. They took a step in the right direction last year, adding players, but we need valuable players that can rush off the edge.
You could just like block that off. Just
defender.
They need anyone on defense, basically. The New York Giants also have some needs on offense as well, but just an infusion of talent. They have earned that unique position to where best player available pretty much no matter what throughout the whole draft, but there will be some solid defenders available for them, not necessarily edge defenders at the top of the draft, so I don't foresee this being the pick for them at number 4.
Defenders for the Giants. Washington Redskins. How about a wide receiver? Even though Terry McLaurin did emerge, is he more of a number 2, possession type guy? He is good at just route running and getting open, but just another compliment, especially in this draft.
I was gonna say, yeah, if your rookie is your number 1 option, that's just very rare, and it speaks more. It spoke a lot to how good Terry McLaurin was out the gate, but it also spoke a lot to how little talent they had outside of him at the receiver position this past year. So yes, weapons for Dwayne Haskins, offensive line help for Dwayne Haskins as well. Anything that can get Dwayne Haskins better, they need, because it was rough last year for him.
I think that's the goal, is build that offense around Haskins as much as possible. New Orleans Saints, we're going receiver. Again, it's kind of a similar story. Michael Thomas, he can get open against any coverage, against any defender. Alvin Kamara is a nice mismatch weapon as a running back, but who are the other key passing options for the Saints? Could use another receiver.
That's the thing, is there is just no one else reliable on that offense outside of Michael Thomas. And teams just knew you could, on a critical 3rd down situation, yes, it's difficult to stop Michael Thomas, but you pretty much knew the ball was going that way. So from that perspective, you could scheme up something to try and stop them. I think any sort of weapon, and there's some interesting guys that I'd love to see in a New Orleans Saints jersey. Laviska Shenault, I think, with Sean Payton would just be so much fun in terms of how good he is at scheming the ball to his playmakers. So someone like that, with how deep this receiving core is in this draft class, would make too much sense for the
Notice
Saints.
Brady, Breeze, and Rodgers, they can all kind of mitigate the pass rush a little bit. So you don't have to focus on the O-line. You just get them some playmakers to throw to. Atlanta Falcons, the secondary. This has been a multi-year issue as well. It was a pretty good roster. Almost won the Super Bowl a couple years ago, but the coverage has been a major issue in Atlanta.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is you have Isaiah Oliver, this former 2nd-round pick, at one of the cornerback positions, and he was fine last year, but not nearly good enough to where I'm like, yes, I'm going to make him my cornerback of the future. You can keep addressing that position with, again, how valuable it is in the secondary, and also the safety position as well, with all the injuries Keanu Neal's had of late. Obviously a need as well. So just any sort of guy that can stop the pass, especially when you're in, the NFC South.
Yeah, rookie Kendall Sheffield was good like every other week last year as a 4th-round pick. They still need a lot of resources thrown at the secondary. And then Tampa Bay Bucks, because Jameis Winston is a free agent, quarterback is a need.
Yeah, quarterback's definitely a need. And I'm not sure they're in a great position to draft quarterback in this class, but if, Justin Herbert starts to fall on boards, Jordan Love could be, Bruce Arians sort of guy with his special downfield throwing ability. I think both of those guys would fit into a Bruce Arians offense. So if Jameis Winston does leave in free agency, I think you're very much going to see one of those two be their pick.
It's going to be a great story this offseason. Does Bruce Arians want to get that young guy to develop? Does he want to bring in a veteran? Does he want to bring in Jameis Winston? Either way, quarterback obviously needs to be addressed in Tampa Bay. And then the Carolina Panthers, they also have quarterback issues to at least discuss and figure out. Do they bring back Cam Newton or build with a new quarterback? But coverage on the back end, cornerback James Bradbury is a free agent, so they got to figure out corner.
Yeah, I would say Bradbury is a free agent and also has not been anything special as of late. Never really lived up to some of that promise he showed early on in his career. Dante Jackson, the other side, is in this almost similar boat at this point with his up and down play there. And it's just going to be a brand new scheme, brand new sort of defense than what they've played before. So I do think a cornerback would make a ton of sense.
Complete overhaul
as well, though, after Luke Kuechly.
Yeah, so. I mean, it's a whole different system. Both sides of the ball. Could be a long rebuild.
Yeah, very much could be a rebuild.
But grab those coverage players in Carolina. Then Seattle Seahawks. We've been saying this for a while, too. The offensive line, again, even though Russell Wilson, it's back and forth between inviting pressure and evading sacks, but it would be nice if they could just sneak a few more clean pockets in there for him.
Yeah, and then right tackle Jermaine Ifedi, I mean, hasn't been good, but is also a free agent this offseason. So offensive tackle, I'm not sure what you're going to get available to you down at the bottom end of the first round, but maybe offensive guard as well, also a need. Could very much upgrade there in rounds 1 or 2.
And moving on to the San Francisco 49ers, they just lost in the Super Bowl. We're going to go back to, they could, shore up that offensive line, especially on the interior.
Yeah, and they have no sort of qualms about drafting more offensive linemen. They know how valuable that is to Kyle Shanahan's scheme to get that strong running game that sets everything up for them as the basis of that offense, and to get athletic offensive linemen. Joe Staley at 35 years old, going to be 36 by the start of next season. How much longer does he have left in the tank? I'm not sure at this point. I mean, he's been one of the best offensive tackles in the NFL. Had played well when healthy this past season, but again, injuries were a concern for him. So maybe start a guy off, maybe draft tackle, start him off on the inside, and then move to left once he retires.
Yeah, I like that. Get ready for those old tackles retiring. And we got the Los Angeles Rams, another issue. Jared Goff did regress this year, but man, he faced so much more pressure this year than he did in 2018. This is probably the biggest difference in the Rams this year. The offensive line just wasn't good.
Absolutely fell off a cliff. I mean, the biggest drop off in terms of their final ranking from 2018 to their final ranking in 2019. Andrew Whitworth, a free agent in his late 30s. He may even retire at this point. So that gives you left tackle as a need, guard as a need, maybe even center as a need. It's just, it really regressed quickly there. They need almost a Atlanta Falcons-esque barrage of picks at this offensive line. Unfortunately, don't have the first rounder to address it, so maybe on the interior, some tackle prospects in the second that I'm not sure it's going to be where you want to be drafting offensive line, but we'll see if they get one that can help.
Might need to get creative, either in free agency as well, but yeah, throw some numbers at the O-line. And rounding out the Arizona Cardinals, their secondary, they've got some O-line things to figure out as well, but again, covering on the back end is so important.
Yeah, that's the thing, is they had Byron Murphy starting on one side across from Patrick Peterson. I think he may be better suited in a sort of slot role, so you still need your third cornerback there on that roster. Throw some resources at it. Their just pass defense was too, but it just wasn't good enough last year to compete in that NFC West.
So there you have it. It's all 32-team NFL needs, NFL draft needs. Mike, it's draft season. Everybody's going to be following your work all draft season, figuring out what their team actually needs. Stick with us here on the PFF YouTube channel. It's team building season, 32 NFL team needs.
Thanks for watching the PFF YouTube channel. And if you want to subscribe, all you have to do is push the button. Don't forget everything you get. A little fantasy, push the button. A little green line for the gambling aspects of the game, push the button. College football, push the button. The YouTube channel from PFF.